Hi there. This is a position that came up in a match not too long ago. Uh, it's a 7-point match. The score is 0-0, so it's 7 away, 7 away. And as I may have pointed out to you before, I always use the away score because that's what matters. If you right-click in Extreme Gammon, you can choose between having the absolute score or the away score. And even when I'm playing in a match and I'm writing down the score, I don't say that the score is 2-1. I might say the score is 6 away, 7 away, so that I can be conscious of the take points and gammon values at that score. But here we are. White is holding the 2 cube and is thinking about redoubling. What do you think is the proper cube action here? Should white redouble? And if white redoubles, should red take or drop? Okay, again, I always advocate using Wolsey's law, so before I redouble or double, I think about whether or not what I would do if I were red. Would I take or drop? And am I sure? Well, I'm sure this is a take. Red has a very well-timed 2-5 back game, and a very well-timed 2-5 back game is almost always a take if it's well-timed. There are some scores because of gammons where you might drop, and there are situations where you might drop because of the take point, but at a normal match score, which this is, where the take points are close to 21% and the gammon values are close to 0.5, it's a little higher at this score. At 7 away, your gammon value is actually 0.53, but still it's an easy take. And because it's such an easy take, it's not even a redouble. Let's take a look. And really, I think you just have to study back games. I actually have a chart that I put together that tells me at what point, assuming the player has good timing, at what point you redouble and at what point you hold the cube. But that's not what I'm going to get into in detail today. Here's what I want you to look at. And again, I am not smart enough to figure these things out over the board. I would never dream that red gets gammon 43.5% of the time here, and he wins 41% of the time. Now, the reason it still is a take is assuming the take points around 21%, these 43 gammons are only worth half as much when gammons are worth about 0.53. And you also have to get credit for the fact that if he turns the game around and wins, he wins gammons about 5.5% of the time. So the net gammons are really only 38%. That's the difference. And that's half of that is 18. So at 0.53, maybe there's 19 gammons. And if you subtract 19 from 41, you still are well above your take point of which around 20-21% here. So that's how you can figure and see that it's an easy take. You win 41% of the time. What's very interesting to me is if you were to change this position to a 1-5 back game, it's a huge drop. That's how horrible a 1-5 back game is. And we'll look at the numbers in a second. The gammons aren't that much different. You get gammon just a little bit more, but you win about 10% less. You only win about 31% of the time instead of 41% of the time. And in truth, this is such a bad game that white is actually too good to redouble. He's supposed to play on from here because he probably wins enough gammons without losing that many games to where he can play a few rolls and see what happens. If he gets into trouble, he can always double and cash his 2 points later. But it's slightly, only very slightly too good to double, just less than 2%. But you can see gammons only went up a little bit, but the wins went way down. You just don't win much from here. Why? Because it's hard to extract these checkers. Even if you get a shot early from here, you're going to have trouble getting these checkers around. Now, you can change, and you should change the situation some to where you give red even a decent board. A really good board. Now it's not too good anymore, but it's still a big pass. It's almost too good. It's a big pass. The 1-5 back game stinks. It's the worst game there is. It's worse than the 4-5 game or the 3-5 game. It's just terrible. And it's hugely different if you have a 2-5 back game. Big take. 41% hour to drop. So again, how do you learn these things? By doing what we're doing right now. By memorizing these, by making these into, in effect, reference positions, knowing that even if it's a reasonably well-timed game, if you have a 2-5 game, it's almost always going to be a take in a 1-5 game. At what point does he get to be too good to double? This is certainly going to be. Let's take a look. Certainly good. It's going to be too good to double by 20%. Yes, you might easily leave a shot, and it could be a double shot. But look at the reward, 61% gammons when they're all in. How do you know what to do here? It's certainly going to be a take. It's still a take. In fact, I was surprised now because you're eminently going to leave a shot, maybe a double shot. I wasn't even sure it was a double here. So you have to really just look at these positions and consider them and study them. What happens when you put a third checker there? Is white in better shape or worse shape? Well, it's a little bit worse. By just a little bit. He almost has a redouble here. Is this an initial double? Well, if you're playing with the Jacobi rule and it's a money game, you sure better double to activate gammons. It turns out it's still a double here too. And that's another factor. Sometimes in match play, you would play on for the gammon where, of course, because of the Jacobi rule in money games, the Jacobi rule says that you can't get value for a gammon unless the cube is turned. So a lot of times you're going to have an initial double in a money game or an unlimited game in order to activate gammons because of the Jacobi rule. I hope you found this interesting. Just remember, if you're in a 1-5 back game, what I advise is get out of it. Try and even if you end up with just a 5-point holding game or just a 1-point holding game, you're better off than trying to play a 1-5 back game. And if your opponent's in a 1-5 back game, flip the cube early. Even if you're making a little bit of a mistake, it's not going to be too big a mistake most of the time. And it's surprising how many players take even later. So again, if you have a player that you don't think is that sharp about the game, you can hold the cube a little bit longer because they're going to take later, because they're going to think a well-timed 1.5 back game is as good as the other kinds of back games, and it isn't. It really is bad. Thanks for watching. Hope this was interesting for you. Bye-bye.